Today you see a real wrap style, which means it totally wraps around. It's not the fake type, and I've got a top and a dress to show you. Can you see that parrot there? It's so cool. I've got the best fabric. Beautiful fabrics, really fun sewing construction. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and I've got some woven sewing for you today. Sewing construction, super interesting. Might look a little harder than it actually is. It's not a garment that will take you 1 or 2 hours to sew. It'll take a little longer than that, but with anything that takes a little longer, it's usually very worth it. What I'm talking about is a new pattern from Sinclair called Eden. This can be either a wrap top or a wrap dress, different lengths there for you to choose from. They have the same exact features. The only thing that will change is the length of the skirt. It's shorter and it'll become a peplum. As I said in the introduction, this is a real wrap style, which means it opens completely, which means you have 2 pieces on the front for both the bodice and the skirt that will totally wrap over. The skirt will totally reach the other side. That means you have amazing coverage both in the bodice and with the skirt. You don't really need a pin for this bodice because the overlap isn't low at all. I'm very safe here. I can bend over and move around, and the overlap is really good. As an extra little detail, there's a small yoke here. It's in 2 layers, which means that seam right here and the shoulder seam is enclosed. Love that. And then this area of the upper chest is wider, which means there's a little bit of gathers into that yoke. Love details like that. I think they're really delicate and really suit a style like this. The neckline is finished with bias tape, but you can either make yourself or use store-bought bias tape. In this case, I did decide to use store bias tape and I thought for my second version, it was going to save me a lot of time. For my first version though, I did make my own bias tape from the fabric. I had plenty and I thought it was going to look nicer. It always just depends on the type of print and the colors that you're using. This bodice has cup sizes A, B, C, D, E, F. That's amazing. And according to that, the size of the dart that comes from the bodice underneath here is going to be a little bigger or a little smaller. You also have darts at the back for the waist. This bodice is a little shorter because what's going to complete the whole bodice length, the whole length up to the waist, is the waistband that comes underneath it. So the bottom of that waistband should reach your natural waist. And these are very long waistband that also includes the ties. So it's made out of 3 pieces, super long. It's going to wrap all the way around. You're going to be sweet. This is a wrap style that when you put it on, you put the left side in first, and then the right side of your body, that's the one that wraps and stays on the outside. Shorter tie is tied up over here. And on the waistband, you're going to have an opening on the right side of your body to put the ties through. Skirt, lovely. I wouldn't say it's a full half circle skirt. It's just A-line. It's got a nice amount of volume, but not excessive. Just the right amount, in my opinion. It gives you a gorgeous fit and flare type of silhouette. One feature that I almost always forget to mention are the inseam pockets. They are there if you want to. They're part of the instructions. They go below that waistband. I never do that type of pocket, so I just sort of ignore that area of the pattern. But if you like pockets, there are pockets in the pattern. If you want your skirt longer, you can just use the skirt piece as it is. That's what I did. It will end up above the knee, but you could also add a ruffle and make it a little longer. And there's 2 lengths for that option, where you have one longer tee and then a shorter tee with a ruffle. For the sleeves, you can make it sleeveless, or you have sleeve options. Little bit of gathers over here, not excessive, and you can have different lengths here, up to 3/4 length, short, cap, whatever you prefer. I made both my versions sleeveless because Eden wrap top and dress is a brand new pattern at Sinclair. It's going to have a nice discount for a period of time. I believe it's 27% off. And the date that I have is the 18th of August. That's until the sale goes through, but it might be a little longer. I know that these dates are sort of flexible, so just have a check. And I'll leave my affiliate link in the top of the comment section, pinned, easy for you to find, also in the description box. If you like my work and it helps your sewing, one easy way that you can support me without it costing you anything is to use my affiliate links, because if you end up purchasing, I get a small commission back. It's one of the ways I make an income creating free content for you to see here on YouTube. So if you use it, I'm very grateful. This is a dress designed for lightweight woven fabric. I would not want to make this in a knit fabric at all. Just construction would be harder if you're working with a knit fabric, so just put your knits away. As usual, you could use something a little more structured and lightweight, like a cotton lawn, chambray, a really light denim, maybe some shirting, some seersucker, that type of fabric. Lightweight, 100% linen would be amazing. A mix of linen and rayon would be good too. Rayon sections, always a nice one. lightweight 100% rayon. The plain weave would be fine. You just have to worry more about interfacing properly. Usually that type of fabric is a little harder to manage, but if you've sewn rayon before, you'll be fine. A little heavier would be rayon twill, a tencel. I've used a fabric for one of them that is 100% rayon crepe. I'd say it's between a light to medium weight. It's a little heavier than one of my other versions, but it still drapes beautifully and looks amazing. And the other one is a rayon 87%, linen 13% blend, mostly rayon, super beautiful. It's a type of blend that I find really commonly here in Brazil, in prints and solids, and I use it all the time, and it's gorgeous. The waistband has 2 layers here, and I told you that they're very long pieces. So you do need some fusible interfacing for the outer layer of this waistband so that it holds structure and it looks really nice. I highly suggest you don't skip interfacing the waistband, the outer layer. It's really important that you do, so have some fusible interfacing around. That will always make the dress look better and also makes the sewing a little easier. For sizing 0 to 30 US, up to 63-inch hip, you know Sinclair Patterns has height files. That is amazing because it solves a lot of vertical fitting issues first. If you choose your height file, these are the height ranges over here. I always choose the tall file and have a super good result. So choose your height file first and then go ahead and look at your circumferences on the measurements chart. Bodice is semi-fitted. Depending on what cup size you choose, A, B, C, D, or E, F, you're going to have more or less space at the bust. Remember, your sewing cup size is different than your bra cup size. To get your sewing cup size, you measure your upper bust and your full bust and get the difference, and that's how you choose what cup size you're using here. If you're doing the AB cup size, you probably have an inch of ease, and then if you're sewing the larger cup sizes, you probably end up with about 2 inches of ease around the bust. At the waist, it's mentioned that it has about 1.5 inches of extra space, but you know, with wrap styles, that's always regulated.
You can tie it a little more or a little less, and that's what's great about these, that you can regulate to what your waist is on that day. So that's just a reference. And then because the skirt is quite A-lined, don't worry about the hippies. There's a lot of space for your hips in this type of skirt.
Personal fitting, other than choosing my height file, which is the tall file, and choosing my size, which is a 14, I made no changes. The small changes I made during testing were made with my first version, but those are things that were corrected in the pattern test, so I wouldn't count those as fitting changes because the final pattern, the one that I sewed for my second version, turned out perfect. So I wouldn't say I made any fitting changes for the final version of the pattern. The bodice length is correct, the skirt length is correct, so I'm all happy. Seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch. It's quite a large seam allowance, so there's a lot of areas where you'll be trimming some away. And for this one, you'll see that I serged all the side seams for the skirt, the bodice. I did that way ahead of time before I even started sewing. It just makes the process easier. You'll see the most important parts and the general construction, focusing on sewing the bodice, enclosing that double yoke over here with the burrito and the gathers. You also see a lot about the waistband, which is something that could get you confused. You'll see how to sew it, just in not full detail, but it will still be super helpful, so let's see. These are the bodice pieces for the Eden dress. This is the front. There are 2 pieces. You can see this diagonal line. This is a wrap bodice. That's why it looks wider. This is going to wrap over each other. And then the final look is like a V neckline. Along the bottom of the bodice, you have a single dot right here. That's going to differ between cup sizes. I'm doing the CD cup size right there. And right there, we can see that this area is wider than the little yoke on the top there because this area is going to be gathered into that yoke. There are 2 layers for this yoke. There's going to be a type of burrito method there to enclose that seam. And here we have the armhole. This armhole is a sleeveless armhole. It's a little narrower than the regular armhole that would have a sleeve. I'm not doing sleeves in my versions. I just like sleeveless. The back is simple. It's cut on the fold. And this one also has a dot over here at the waist area. Now I've done a few things already before we get into the sewing, so I could just get them out of the way. One thing I've already done is serge the side seams. That's already done. Up closer you can see that I've already done stay stitching. I've done stay stitching on these sleeveless armholes as well. Close to the edge because this is going to be finished with binding later. Also this diagonal area of the front bodice, very important to do stay stitching so it doesn't end up stretching out and gaping. What I've already done over here as well is do my gathering stitches. Now the seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch, so I've done the first one at about 1/4 of an inch and the second one at 3/4 of an inch. Now on the back, I've also done the same step of the stay stitching on the neckline. so I don't have to worry about that. I also have the stay stitching done on the armhole. These are all the waistband pieces. Now for all of these 3 types of waistbands, they have different lengths. For all of them, there's an interfaced layer that I have on the top and a non-interfaced layer that I have on the bottom. The interfaced layer is going to be the waistband that's on the outside of your garment, so that's going to be the smoothest, most firmest. And the non-interfaced layer is going to be inside, touching your skin. It's going to be nice and soft. So the shortest one that you see on the top is for the back. This medium-sized one is going to be on the right wearer's side. It's a little shorter than this other longer one, which is going to end up being on the left wearer's side. Just make sure you label them. I've labeled them. These are the skirt pieces for the Eden. I'm doing the version that would just reach above the knee with one skirt piece. There's another version where you can add a ruffle here to get a longer dress, but I'm not doing that. So this is the back, it's cut on the fold, and then these are the 2 front pieces. They are both the same and they're both cut on the fold. Remember, this is a wrap dress, a real wrap dress, so there's going to be 2 layers in the front. Now for each of these pieces, it took up a whole length of fabric, so it can get a little bit fabric hungry. What I've done with these, just to save myself some time later, is serge the edges. So everything's done there. I'm going to be sewing and pressing the seams open, and it will just make it easier when it's time to get sewing. Here are the 2 front pieces. Here you can see it stay stitched. This is the center. This is going to be the neckline. The yoke also has a center area here and the area of the armhole. I have stay stitched my armhole area. The other way you're going to know what side is what is with the notches here at the bottom that are going to match the notches right here. And I have my 2 rows of gathering stitches. And this is what's going to be gathered to fit that width right there. We have 2 layers of the yoke, but first we're going to deal with that first layer. So what we're going to do is put these right sides together. We have the front piece on top because that is the longest one that we're going to gather, and we always want the gathers on the top. So you can see the little line up to where the gather is going to go. It doesn't go all the way to the edge, and that is super correct. So that's how that looks. And now we need to pull these little threads to gather this area. That's how much it's going to be gathered. It's not huge. It's not really excessive. It's just a really nice detail on the upper chest. I'm going to repeat that with this other side. And then this is just going to be a basting stitch. So I'm going to do this stitch smaller than the 5/8 seam allowance we're going to use later for the final one. I've done this seam at 3/8 because it's just to hold these 2 layers together. But now we have the second yoke layer. Now here are the notches as well. That lets you know that this is the bottom part that is going to go attached right there. This is the armhole area, which I stay stitched, so I know that this goes where the armhole is over here. And so this other side that doesn't have anything is actually the neckline. So all I'm going to do is place these right side to wrong side over here. Basically sandwiching this front piece. If I move this out of the way and make the 2 yokes touch, they are both right sides together right there. It's just putting this one on top and doing another seam, and this time we're doing the actual seam allowance of the pattern, which is 5/8 of an inch, to get all these layers together. Then of course I'm going to trim this because that is a lot of seam allowance to leave in there, and then we can head over to the iron and press this seam nicely. Here we have the back piece all extended. It's on the fold. Look at these awesome parrots. Now we're going to take our front pieces and just put them right sides together here, matching up the shoulder seams, and we're just going to sew 1 layer first, and then we're going to do a little burrito roll to sew the second. So take this little yoke that's there and just put it aside, and now we're going to sew the shoulder seams. I'm going to sew just like I did before with a smaller seam allowance. I'm just going to join them with 3/8, and then when we do the roll, then we're going to do the final seam with the 5/8 seam allowance. Okay, here are the shoulder seams that we've just done. Remember, it's just right sides together, and this layer that's on the inside is just flopping around free for both of these. Now this is super easy. All you need to do is get all this bulk and just roll it up and bring this over to meet this other seam over here. It's a little bit of a snug fit. It's a small yoke, so it is a snug fit in here, and this is how we're going to sew it at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So let me show you again. There is the front, there is the yoke that's free. Just roll all of this up here on the table. It's just a bodice. Bring it around, wrap around everything. This free area is going to meet the seam that we'd already done right there. This method encloses the seam and gives you a really neat finish inside. And this now is a 5/8 seam allowance. Just be careful that you don't catch all this fabric you have under there. So that's why I have my fingers here so I can touch that the area is free. There you can see it, and now we'll just trim away the excess just like we did before. And that's one side done. Now all we need to do is pull it out carefully. This is how the little yoke looks. This is the front. There are the gathers. The back is simple. There's no gathers. And on the inside, both of the seams are enclosed. Now, I would suggest just doing one first and then the other. It's just easier. And now we have this side. This is free. I'm just going to roll all this together and bring this around so you can meet this other seam, and it's the exact same thing. I have a lot of yardage of satin bias tape. I'm really happy with this one because it's super soft. As you can see, it's not stiff. So when I can use it, I use it, and I did use it for the binding over here. I have already sewn the binding. I did not film that. I have a separate video on how to bind. Nothing different. I have understitched and then the top stitching there, so that's all in place. And now I've left the darts for this stage. There's no urgency in doing the darts. If there's no urgency, I'd rather finish the neckline first to prevent this from stretching out. I'm going to sew them like I sew all my darts, from the tip of the dart first, because it's just easier to regulate the needle where it's going to go in, so you can get a really neat finish there. And then I go off to the widest part. I don't back tack when I start, I just knot it by hand at the end. Okay, here's a little bodice with the binding done. The darts are done. I've pressed all the darts. Those are the ones on the back. Now what I'm going to do is sew the side seams. I'm going to do that off camera because it's just a really straight seam. And then just to get it out of the way, I'm going to bind the armholes as well. I'm going to use the same bias tape I've used over here, the pre-made satin bias tape. And once the bodice is done, I can forget about it and then go on to attach the waistband with the ties. I'm going to sew the waistband / ties in the way that you're going to understand and it's going to turn out correct. So to make it easier, I've turned the pieces right sides up because that's how they're going to be worn on the body. So first we get the longest piece. This is the longest tie you have there. These are all interfaced ones. These are going to be on the outside of the dress, the ones that this is the layer that's going to be visible. So first we need the super long one that's going to end up on the left side of your body. That's the one that comes first. Then we have the back piece over here, which is the shortest one. And because it's easier to visualize it like this, I'm just going to start pinning them while they're on the table. So I'll just pin these right sides together just with a pin to hold them in place. And then after this back piece, which is the shortest one, comes the other front piece, which is less long than the other one. And this is going to end up on the right side of your body, and it's a shorter tie. So that's what comes next. So the waistband ties are composed of 3 pieces. One that's super long, the back one, and then the other front one that's a little shorter. So that's how this is sewn. Now the difference is that on this one, we're not going to sew this whole seam straight through. We're going to sew a little bit and a little bit. This is correct. So now I'm going to replicate the same thing with the other layers that are not interfaced. So I'm just going to flip them now so that we see the interface side. I'm going to put them wrong sides together so they end up mirrored. And this is the way that you're not going to make a mistake. So we'll pin these right sides together over here. That goes right there. And then we have the super long one at the end. So if you do this on the table exactly as I'm showing you, you're going to end up with the ties on the right side and everything correct. Okay, so we have both of the layers all pinned. Now we just get those little seams sewn. What I'm going to do first are these 2 seams that are only partial, and these are the seams that unite the back waistband with the shorter tie. The shorter tie, remember, is labeled as a front outer tie, and it's going to end up on the right wearer's side. I made sure to label that very nicely so I don't get confused. Now over here, I also, when I was pinning it, I marked it in red so that I wouldn't get confused either, and that these are the ones that we're going to sew only 5/8 of an inch here and 5/8 of an inch right there on both. I've made little marks so that I know when to stop, and then the rest is left open. This is going to be the opening where you put the tie in through the side. This opening is going to be on the right side of you. What we have over here is the bodice. It's all extended. At this point, the bodice is done, the binding, the armholes, all of that. All I need to do now is attach it to the waistband. So these are both right sides up right here. This is the right wearer's side. This is the right wearer's side. This is the side where we have the opening right here. You can see my finger. So I'm just going to flip this over right sides together over here and pin it all the way along. The back waistband should match the side seams, and then over here towards the left wearer side, we have the super long tie over here. So I'm gonna pin these right sides together. Once I've pinned that and have it in place, I'm gonna flip this so that the wrong side is up. And then we get the other layer of the waistband, the one that's not interfaced. And this one's gonna go right side to wrong side over here. And basically 2 layers of waistband are gonna sandwich the bodice right there. If we move the bodice out of the way, the 2 waistband layers would be right sides together, but there is the bodice in between. So remember, the non-interface layer is right side to wrong side over here. And I'm just gonna reuse the same pins to pin all and then do it in one go. This is how the bodice looks like with the waistband pinned on. It's extended, the bodice is right sides up. This is the right wearer's side, and this is where we have the short tie. As you can see, it only reaches there. The left wearer's side has a super long tie there. This is the back waistband that meets the side seams of the bodice right there. And this is the side that has the opening right here. What I have here is the outer layer that's interfaced right sides together with the bodice. But on the inside, I have the layer of the waistband that's not interfaced, and that's wrong side to right side there. It's pinned all the way, so now it's a super, super long seam, starting from one side all the way to the other side, 5/8 seam allowance. I'll do that off camera because that is not very interesting to see. And then I'm going to show you what we're going to do with this section of the ties right there, because then we need to do another seam here. Okay, here is the super long seam sewn. I'm going to trim that seam allowance later. But now we have to sew this other part of the tie. Now what you can do here is lift this up and see where the edge is right there. So that is the edge of the bodice. I've drawn a little line right here. And then with a pen, I've just drawn a straight line up. The cutting mat here is really, really helpful. That's why I have one here and where I sew. And so I drew a straight line there. And that is where I'm going to start sewing the rest of the tie. Because at the end, you want this waistband, when we flip it down, to be at the same level of the bodice right here. So that's the easy way to do it. So I'm going to start there, reinforce, and then sew this tie over here. And then going over to this other side, it's the same thing. If I lift the seam allowance, I can see the edge of the bodice is right there. And I drew a straight line up, and that's where I'm going to reinforce and sew from here all the way to the other side. Then we can flip this side of the tie, press it, neaten it up and everything. And then we're going to end up with a raw section of the waistband here when we flip it down to be able to sew the skirt. Okay, there we have the seam that finishes the rest of the tie. What we need to do now is snip from this edge up to the seam, like that. That's really important. Now from this part, we can trim all of the seam allowance down. Can leave half of it here, that's enough. But don't trim away this part because we need the full seam allowance here to be able to sew on the skirt. All this long seam over here can also be trimmed in half. This is the other side where the tie is. You can really see my black stitches here, and I'm also going to trim up to there so that we can flip this tie to the other side. And I'm also going to get rid of seam allowance all around the tie like that. Is one of the ties. I'm just going to use a safety pin because it's easier, and I'm just going to turn the tie right sides out in this section. This is the shorter tie. You do the same thing on the other side. This is extremely easy because the tie is not too narrow, so safety pin's going to fly through there and you can pull it all out. There is that tie. It's super messy. I still have to go and press it and tidy it up. But now you can see that when we pull the waistband down, the bodice is enclosed on the inside and on the outside. That's the seam in there. And this is why we needed to do that little snip. We need access to this area here to sew on the skirt afterwards. So I'm going to tidy this up, press it, all of that, turn the longer tie here on the other side, right sides out as well, neaten this all up, and then I'll be back to sew on the skirt. I have sewn the skirt pieces. It's really easy. This is the back of the skirt. This is the front. That is the front over there. You can see I've pressed my seams open. And before sewing these side seams of the skirt, I did stay stitch the waist of the skirt. You can see the stay stitching there. It's really curved. I really did not want that to stretch out and end up longer and not fitting the bottom of my bodice. So that's done. Over here is my bodice. I've been to the iron and pressed my ties. I always roll the seams with my fingers and hand baste that so I don't burn myself. So that's what I've got here. This is the bottom of the waistband. This is the raw area that we snipped into. This is where the skirt is going to be attached to. And over here at the back area, I have a pin at the center back. All we need to do is put the bodice right sides up, bring the skirt, match the center back to the bottom of that waistband area, and pin all the way. I'm going to show you what happens at the edge of the skirt piece at the sewing machine. Okay, here is the bodice. Underneath we have the skirt. I want to sew the waistband on top because it's the most stable one. The skirt is slightly more curved, so I'm leaving that one at the bottom. This is the side seam of the bodice, and we come over to this side, and this is what I've done with the skirt over here. I'm going to unpin it so you can see. The pattern indicates fold in by 5/8 of an inch right there in top stitch. That's how you finish the edge of the skirt. So I did a memory crease so I can see it. So this raw area of the waistband is going to reach exactly to where I have that fold. And then I'm going to take this tie out of the way and just bring this over like this, wrap it around. And that's how I'm going to enclose that raw area. So that's how I'm finishing this. And this has been pinned all the way to the other side. On the other side, I've done the exact same thing. You can see I've got the tie out of the way and I've got this 5/8 of an inch coming in like this. So I'm going to start sewing here 5/8 of an inch all the way across. And then we're going to flip it and all this raw area is going to be tucked inside. Okay, there's a little seam. If you think it's weird, just wait and see now because it's going to be so neat. Here it is when we flip it. So you can see the tie comes neatly from there. There's the bodice and there's the skirt aligned at the same level. And from the inside, you're going to cover all that raw area in there. And this is how you're going to finish the center front of the skirt. So after doing this, then I'm going to top stitch the center front of the skirt down there. This is the bottom where I'm going to do the hem. I've already serged the edge. Here I'm going to flip it like this as well and sew a little seam there, the same distance that I'm going to use for my hem allowance, and then flip it and I'll also get a neat finish right there. But first, I'm going to flip this back to how it was, like I've sewn it. And now I'm going to serge this. While I'm serging, I'm going to be trimming away quite a bit to just leave about 3/8 of an inch in here. And that's how we're going to finish this part of the skirt and the bodice. This is the dress that you saw in the tutorial. This is 100% rayon crepe, a little heavier but still very drapey. This is a lovely fabric I found for my birthday shopping spree. My husband took me at the beginning of the year. And this is actually dead stock farm Rio fabric that I found in a shop. So look at this parrot over here. It's large scale print. This print was actually directional on the fabric. All the parrots were heading in the same direction. So I had to be really careful to cut everything to match that, which meant I used a little more fabric than I would have if I could have turned the bodice or the skirts the other way around. But that's what you get when you buy directional fabric. There are large parrots in a lot of the print you can see there. So nice. And I thought this fabric with a large print was perfect because there aren't many seams. The skirt pieces are quite large and the bodice pieces don't really cut into the parrots that much. I wouldn't have chosen it if there were princess seams or things like that. So that's really nice. Now you can see this is the right side of the body and this is where the little opening is for the tie. This is how you would put it on. And you can also see the enclosed waistband inside. Very nice. On the right side of the body, you have the shortest tie. On the left side of the body, you have the long tie. So you take that tie, put it through the opening over here, and it's going to come out over here. This is the right side that wraps over, and this is the side where you're going to get the knot. It would be easier to show you if I had this on, but that means I'd have to be in my undies and stuff, and I'm not going to put that out there on the internet. I've seen some people do that, and I'm always shocked. I'm like, how are you showing your bra and your undies? Anyway, I'm not talking about the sewing community. I'm talking about fashion influencers. They start their get ready with me with their undergarments on. I can't. I've got a video showing you how to do bias binding on things like necklines and armholes. I'll have that link down below. when there's a garment that features that, I don't usually film it over and over again. It's super repetitive for you and for me. And that is the one for the armholes. Satin bias tape is beautiful. And then the skirt, nice. I knew that if I did this hem by machine, I would totally ruin the look. I took a long time to just sew this by hand. And it wasn't bad because I was watching the Olympics and several athletic stuff while I was doing this hem. So it went by pretty fast and it was really relaxing. I think the fit is amazing. The darts at the back and the dart here on the bust is beautiful. Gives you a really good fit and a really safe overlap over here. So let's see this one on, styled on its own, just with lovely shoes and then with a little topper. This is my Eden wrap dress from Sinclair Patterns. I sewed a size 14 with a toe file with the skirt that doesn't have a ruffle at the bottom and it reaches sort of mid-knee. I really love this rayon crepe. You'll see up close I've got some huge scale parrots in the print. This is a real wrap dress and the ties are on the right side of my body, same as the little opening on the waistband that lets the ties go through. The wrap is really good. It goes from one side to the other side, so it's a really good wrap. You're not going to have a problem with it opening up or showing anything because it wraps completely from one side to the other. I hope you can see the large scale parrots here in the print. I think it's so beautiful. At the back you can see the tie wraps over the back and it's such a good fit. Up closer you'll see that there's a waistband and the bottom of this waistband reaches at my natural waist right there. That's the intended fit and that's what I got with the toe file, so I'm really happy with that. And this fabric is everything. It's just so beautiful. It wasn't that hard to work with. There you can see that the right side of the dress wraps over the left side. The right side is the one that has a shorter tie. That's how it is. You just have to experiment when you try it on. Sometimes it's a little hard to figure out, but I found this one's really easy. I love the crossover there. It's really nice. I don't need a pin. I don't feel exposed. And on the inside it's finished with bias tape. I have a sleeveless version here because I like sleeveless, but you can also add sleeves, different types of sleeves, and it's just so lovely. You can see I'm bending over so you can see how safe this is. I think a large part of the great fit is the cup sizes. I've done a CD cup size here, and you can see that little gathered section underneath the yokes there on the front. That's such a delicate detail, super pretty, love doing that. Those yokes have 2 layers and it's all enclosed on the inside with a burrito roll. Such a lovely dress. I'm so happy I made it. And even though it's a dress you don't sew up in 1 or 2 hours, any time it will take you to sew, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be worth it because it's so lovely. The fit is amazing. And a real wrap dress is always going to be a classic style. You'll always be very well dressed and the fit and flare style suits a lot of people. So I'm very happy with mine in black and white. I couldn't go wrong. A dress is an outfit in itself, so it's not like you have a lot of options, but this little red topper that's shorter is perfect. At the sides of this topper, it's shorter as well with a curved hem, so I think it really suits the fit and flare silhouette here. The volume of the skirt doesn't make the topper poof out like it would if this was a longer top, so this is perfect. The red, the black and the white, there's no way to really mess it up here with the color combination, keeping it really classic. And this is one of the ways I'll be wearing this if I want a light topper on top. I also have a cropped linen blazer in black that could go with this, but I think I'll probably wear it on its own just to show it off a little bit more because it's just such a pretty dress. This is my second version. This is a shorter version. Now, this is actually the one that I sewed in the testing process as my wearable muslin. I do wearable muslins with Sinclair Patterns because I'm always sure I'm going to get a really good fit, usually. So I really wasn't concerned that I was going to waste this fabric and that I was not going to be able to wear it. And the small changes that were made, I was able to tweak onto this to get the same fit. So I'm very happy. For this one, I did make the bias tape that goes inside. I had plenty of fabric and I didn't really want to put something contrasting in here. Same for the sleeveless armholes. I have the bias tape, really nice. And for this one, because it was the first version and I was experimenting and I was also very confused, I sewed the ties wrong, which I was sure to correct for the tutorial I filmed for you. And, you know, It's easy to get confused with right and left. I've always gotten confused with right and left my whole life. I have to put things on my body to confirm this is the right, this is the right, you know. What I did here was make the opening on the right side as well. So that's correct. But I sewed the long tie on the right side of the body and the short tie on the left side of the body, which was the inverse. I can still wrap it, I can still sort of fudge it, but it's not correct. Just so you see that I make mistakes as well. But I think if you make a mistake like this, it's not the end of the world. You'll still be able to tie up your top or dress. It's just that on this time, I have the knot on the other side on the left instead of on the right. Doesn't matter, it still ties. But don't take this as how it's supposed to be. Please look back at the black dress, that is the correct one. But the details are all the same. The waistband is enclosing the seam that unites it to the bodice. And then this edge is serged really neatly. Trim that seam allowance down. It's so nice. Love it so much. Now this one I was able to style it a few more ways. I think three ways for you to see. And even with different styles, like slimmer pants, wider pants, you'll see. This is my Eden wrap top. The only difference here is that the skirt is just shorter. And I've paired it with a pair of flared pants. I think the flared pants go well. I wouldn't wear skinny jeans with this top. I like these pants because they were fitted up on the top, but they have a wider hem, so I think it balances it all out. And I shortened my peplum quite a bit because I wanted it to be at the mid hip. It's the same size 14 with a toe file. The fabric here is a rayon linen blend. You'll see up closer it's got some paisley print there. Look at this print, it's just so amazing. The waistband hits right where it has to be at my natural waist. This was actually my first attempt at this pattern, so I ended up with the ties on the wrong side. I can still tie it up, but with the dress it's all correct. It doesn't really make much of a difference. There's a lot of red in this print, so I decided to pair it with this pull-up stretch cotton skirt that I have. It's a type of pencil skirt with an elasticated waistband, very comfortable. This is a very comfortable outfit, and I think the proportions of the top with the skirt go really well together, and I'm really happy with how this looks. I'm really happy I made the peplum shorter. I think it's the perfect length for me. I wouldn't have wanted it longer. Make sure you are happy with the length of the things that you make. Sometimes the design is longer than what you want. Just make it shorter. That's what I did here, and I'm very happy. There's a lot of people that say that crop pants make you look shorter and all things like that, but I think I can get away with it with my height, and I've always loved them. With this one, because it's a light tone that's close to my skin tone and I'm keeping the shoes in a light tone as well, I think it doesn't really cut me off that much. So I'm gonna keep wearing my crop pants, thank you very much. And I think the wide style of these crop pants really suit the peplum because it's nicely fitted at the waist. So I don't feel boxy or frumpy in any way, shape or form, even though I am wearing crop pants that are a little bit wider. Styling is all personal, of course. Everyone feels different in different styles, and I actually feel amazing in these pants. And I think they pair together with this crop peplum very, very well. I love these. I think the style is super classic. You know, a real wrap dress, you can wear these for decades. They've never been out of style or in style, that type of thing. It's really classic. Just depends on the type of fabric and print you choose. Whenever I hear people saying wrap dresses are out, I'm like, no, they're not. I see people wearing them all the time. Since I can have a memory of fashion, since the 90s, I've seen people wearing wrap dresses. So don't think it's something trendy or not trending. I think it's something classic. And I think the features of this dress are super classic. The feet and flare style is going to suit a lot of people, and It's worth the time it takes to sew up a top or a dress. I really love these. Whatever time it takes you to make something like this, it's really worth it. The fit is amazing and you can be really proud of making a dress that fits so well. Let me know your comments, your opinion about wrap styles. I know it's a little bit controversial. Some people think, yeah, they really suit everyone, and other people say, no, they don't. I really think they suit everyone. And maybe you've had a bad experience with some wrap styles that just don't wrap enough. I know I've certainly had that, where I need to put a pin and I feel that I don't get enough coverage here. Sometimes it is the intended design to be super plunging and showing cleavage, which I never want. I think my opinion usually depends on what the coverage of the neckline is, and that's usually got to do with the bust fit as well. So the fact that this pattern has bust cup sizes and has a great coverage and a pinless type of design, I'm really, really happy, really, really content, and really confident to be able to recommend this pattern to you, because I'm sure you're going to be happy, just as happy as I am. That's all from me. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.